Hello everyone, it's Charles1K92 and we're back. Technically with some more Black Flag, but more in relation to the database entries at least. We're not really going to be going over into shanties because these can be heard more or less by your crewmen who are, well, sailing with you, and every now and then we'll start singing. So, I mean, these are the names of each one. Drunken Sailor, Fish in the Sea, Good Morning Ladies All, Hand Me Boys, Holly Holly Ho, Hi Ho, Come Roll Me Over, Homeward Bound, Johnny Boker, Leave Her Johnny, Leave Her, Lowlands Away, Paddy Doyle's Boots, Padstow Farewell, Randy Dandy O, Roll and Go, Roll Boys Roll, Rollabola, Running Down to Cuba, So Early in the Morning, Spanish Ladies, Storm Long John, The Coasts of High Bar Bay, The Dead Horse, The Rio Grande, The Sailboats of Malachi, The Wild Goose, The Worst Old Ship, Where Am I Going to, My Johnnies, Whiskey Johnny, and Way Me Susanna. We could go from peoples to locations to landmarks to ships to art collections and the fauna, but there's no real point. There's documentations that are the interesting bits, and there's letters that I'd like to go over. So, we have these manuscripts, bits and pieces of information that would have been taken from the Peter Beckford estates. More or less, these are just random bits of documentation that Kenway would have collected throughout his time in, well, near Havana, Cuba, near Havana, Kingston, and all along the West Indies. And funnily enough, the majority of, if not some of these, are, well, these are all historical documents in the real true sense. Ubisoft probably, in their making of this game in particular, probably did go out of their way to find snippets and just say, like, these things were belonging to people. Or Beckford, as it were. It might all be truthful. I have got no true idea. I'd have to go and take a very deep look into it. But the only thing that is the interesting is the Voynich manuscripts. This is a real book. This is a real thing. It's not made up. None of these things that I've shown you really are made up at all. These are real, and they are probably somewhere in some art museum or gallery or someplace entirely. Maybe in the hands of a very rich individual. Who knows? But the manuscript ones are the interesting, since they are, well, they've never been truly deciphered. Not a single page, not a single text, not even a letter to my knowledge has been decoded or translated into anything. Some could turn around and say that it's a bunch of nonsense, others say it can hold the secrets to the universe, depending on who you talk to. But yeah. Now, these ones are relating to the Sage. This is from the Sage of a different life, of a different time. He was born in 1652. Now, judging from how it goes from sage to sage, some sages take 100 years, some take less than 100 years. Sometimes there's two sages all at the same time. Now, this one, his name is called Tom. He was born in 1652, formerly in Boston, now of the world, living in the year of 1706. So, we know the day he was born to the day he died. He was taken to isolation long ago in the place of my ancestors in pursuit of peace, steadiness, in peace and steadiness of spirit. My story is of a singular one. Though I make no claim of greatness or nobility, yet there is such an amount of strangeness in my blood it bears mention, with the wish that a better understanding may come from my situation, and with the hope that if there be any others in the world who suffer the same preterpitations of mind as I have since birth, they might find me a kindred soul, and a friendly voice to guide them to calmer shores of sanity. In plain words, I was born a creature of two souls, one being of my own, newly mint and fresh upon the world stage, yet the other being an old, wise thing, a soul as old as the universe itself may be. Two souls, therefore, in a single body competing for supremacy. For as long as I have been being, I have felt these two tides stirring me within. How this mysterious incorporation should have occurred shall be a subject of future letters. Now, granted, the way how this is written and the way how it's, well, typed to us, it's not really spelt correctly, but if we take into consideration language changes over time, and we can also imagine if we try to pronounce it how we'd think, then there's a big difference. So, anyway, early opinions of his condition. From birth, he was known to his parents and his neighbours as a boy of strange habits and impulses, his eyes being the most obvious ones. So they're unequal of colour and in dimension. Always invited odd comments and query, being so easy to discern. So I can imagine the moment anyone spoke to him or asked about him or anything else. Oh yeah, he's got odd eyes. Don't know why. But my behaviour was also noticeably queer. Now, I know what many people would say, what, queer as in gay? No, queer as in strange. Remember, language back in the past had different meaning, different forms of context. So, noticeably queer means it's noticeably odd. It's not kind of right considering his age. So, I was given to gesticulation of a mysterious sort. Signs and symbols that appear to my parents to portend a meaning they could not defer. I was also said that I never did cry or protest. Strange for a babe, but likely a comfort to my dear mother. So, I'm not saying that this isn't the case, but some kids just don't cry, or they don't get upset. Some could make the argument that they probably, from a point of view, could say, well, they're born as a reincarnation, meaning that this is the next life for them. But I don't know. It's a whole big mismatch of shit that I would require another video really to go down. But nonetheless, so I gained the gift of speech in my 12th month. So 12 months in, he began to speak. His first words being, "My love and beloved." My parents seized upon this as a good sign of robust intelligence, but could not have been much pleased with what words implied. And right they were to be anxious for such a time that I should have called these shepherds mother and father by the age of 2 years. I had already taken to refer them to Elizabeth and Thomas. A queer sort of quirk for an infant, it needed to be said, but this was my impulse, and until I passed through adolescence, was a practice I stuck to. So he kept on saying, probably, instead of saying for mum or mother Elizabeth, and instead of father Thomas. So I can imagine it must have been a bit difficult for mum and dad to hear their child address them by name specific. So, of the city I called home for nigh 2 decades, I had nothing but fond memories. Boston was a place of great beauty and peace. My father was a cobbler by trade, and my mother kept a modest house, as she raised me as best she could. Together, we lived along the southern shore, near the wharfs that saw the tall ships in the comings and goings, shuttling all manner of goody to the to and from these young colony. From this young colony, sorry. I remember being always fascinated by those ships and the promise of adventure and prestige. And it was not for want of distraction or imagination that I spent a many mornings sitting upon the docks to watch them enter the harbour from locations afar or disappear from it, sinking into the horizon silently as a dream. I wondered then what lay beyond that thin line of azure, and in wondering set of the course of my desire, I wished to travel, to discover. So it was that I knew from these early days, I would not live out my life in Boston, but would range far and wide in search of the source of the strange secret within me. Of that more shall be writ at another time. Or written, but it's writ really, another time. But let it be known that I was content for a time, and that I loved my parents very much. First reverie. I would like to say memory, but reverie will do. I think that's what it is. Because I've read this passage quite a couple times whenever he says stuff, and it's always intriguing. So, so just checking up on language here. So reverie is a state of being pleasantly lost in one's thoughts, a daydream. Or we say music, an instrument piece suggested a dreamy or musing state. And then there's one which is a fanciful or unpractical idea and or theory. Interesting. So, here we go. I recalled with great clarity the day of my first reverie. Heretofore, I had only the sense of my bicameral mind, but on this day I was offered a glimpse as if there were a window into a second buried soul, into a second life within me. I was 4 years of age, and it was a fresh autumn day. I was out with my parents upon an excursion, strolling about the place called Beacon Hill. We, having only concluded our picnicking, now ranged about the peak to take the view of the city below. It was then a coldness fell upon me. The world seemed to darken and glow all at once. I fell back landing. It seemed into a pair of coddling arms. A voice said to me, "Go, beloved, go to your rest." As eerie as this was, a deep love suffused me. The voice went on, "Your sacrifice will not have been in vain, and though you must pass from this life, I will see you renewed, reborn, to remain at my side forever." Never before and rarely since has I felt such a deep of adoration. Then the skies cleared and the world lighted, and I woke spine with my parents looming over me, calling my name. His deepening predicament. It is with deep sadness I should now relate the genesis of my feeling of great isolation from my parents, even at a young age, and my powerful sense that I was too much different from them, meaning that though they had borne me and raised me, it seemed not of their issue, nor of their kind. And the reverie described previously cast this feeling in a firm mould. I seemed not to be of this world at all. Indeed, there were days when I felt not remotely human at all, but of a kind of creature entire. Between the time of my 4th year and my 14th, I was given such a profusion of reveries and ideas and dreams that I should sound mad to describe them, yet by outward appearance I was as normal as any lad, and further was never particularly troubled by what crossed my mind. Visions of a great cities made of glass, portraits of beautiful men and women in great flowing robes, machines that generated lightning as easy as thunderclouds, vehicles that flew in the skies as birds. As I say, ideas and visions too fanciful to be entertained by any sane mind, yet all real in my head to be ignored. And this is what the predicament is of being born as a sage, or in this case as a being who came before. The deepening of confusion, especially depending on when these memories come to fruition. And for this version of the sage, he had this when he was a child. Now, I could imagine he could question it because he still had his own sense of identity. But if the entity that is the sage in question chooses to be more dominant than the person that was meant to be, then that mind, that ancient person, takes on the role of being in control. Meanwhile, the original person is taking a back seat. So in this case, it seems to me that whoever is writing this down, Tom, he's more in control. Even though that the sage aspect of him is wanting more. And I know that might sound strange, and I could just use Bartholomew Roberts. Roberts, as far as I can turn around and say, from the moment we saw him and from the moment that he died, he was the ancient person more. Yes, he had visions and he had memories of a life that he already lived, meaning that he knows of his past. But I am inclined to believe that the sage, the man that we were speaking with, was more in mind of his ancient counterpart than, let's just say, of what he would normally be, is what I'm trying to put my point across. So his apprenticeship. So when he was aged 14 years, his father, feeling that he should discover some better skills and of trade, sensible to the habit of his mind, he apprenticed him to a master carpenter joiner called Jonathan Davenport of Boston. Master Davenport had then many slaves, the two other white boys in his employment, one a bricklayer by trade and the other a carpenter, both not terribly clever. But seeing in me a certain spark of intelligence and wit, Master Davenport was all too keen to place me as a joiner, and I was happy to oblige, the position earning me £2 a year and a great satisfaction of spirit. Again, £2 for in that time, I suspect must have been worth, tradesmen were very valued, so it would have been a pretty decent money. £2 a year. Okay, a joiner's work requires a nice, steady hand and a great taste of ornament. Both qualities Master Davenport told me I had in a large measure, and so it was right with great pride that, well, prior to the customary 7 years, I took leave of my master only in 5. So he was very ahead, and set out on his own at 19 years of age to seek my own success. Now a man and master in my own right. My master was not sad to see me go, but bade me a good fortune, for he knew in his heart that I was the greatest talent he had yet apprenticed. For there is something of a natural genius in you, lad, a wisdom beyond your years. And so, packing a kit of all my worldly possessions, I bid my mother and father much love and farewell, then took passage on a merchant brig bound for Jamaica in the West Indies, where need for carpenters of skill were greatly needed. So this is where I'd imagined, because right now at this stage, he's already written all these letters near the end of his life, and he's just remembering everything. And my only guess is that he told, well, wherever he was at the end, to drop these bottles into the ocean and see where they lay. This is not relating to this to me reading these letters as they are, but upon finding them in different locations and whatnot. So it pains me now to think on my feeling of my departure from Boston and from my dear parents who raised me so well. For in hindsight, I think perhaps I should have been melancholy, or anxious at the least. Yet leaving home at so spry an age ranks as one of the great joys of my life. Never before or since did I feel such an embrace of freedom. That's nice. Yet not all concerning my leaving was joyous, as it was around this time that the voices came upon me strong, much like a man whispering in my ears. These voices were neither sinister in nature, nor did they prevent mature dealings with my fellow man, but unlike my reveries, which came to me in my sleep or in my daydreams, those voices came upon me at times more or less inconvenient to my present purpose. Day and night they introduce with provocation, and though they were not constant, they were certainly frequent in nature, and strange of all, the quality of memories. There were times too that I seemed to hear my own voice among them. Was it possible I heard conversations from a previous life, memories of those I knew, memories of engagements long past? In the next letter I shall relate what were perhaps the most confounding snatches of the conversation. What did they say? So, here he relates a memory that he repeated nauseaism throughout the whole of his life. Myself a man and two women. A woman. As biological traits are passed from one generation to another, why should we not engineer the humans to pass learned information to their offspring as well? It is well within our scope, and here another woman interrupts. Never. Already we have made them sturdy and strong. Why should we gift them with new advantages over us? We are dying. The war is tilting against us. We should discover a means of our own salvation, not theirs. And here the man disagrees. Our time is done. The instruments of our will shall not be our master. Our time is done. The instruments of our will shall soon be our masters, and we shall fade away. Perhaps not in 10 or 20 years, but certainly this century is our last. Why not therefore gift the humans with added facilities for wisdom and growth? Why not let them pass on the acclamations of their learning from one generation to the next? By every ascending degree, the humans shall be as wise as we are. And here I seem to speak. It can be done. By simple manipulation of the code within their blood, we could improve their lot. And here the second woman screamed, absolutely not. And then the memories ended. So, my imagination is Minerva, Juno, Dinier, and then him, which would be Aita. A curious incident at sea. Upon my route to the West Indies, a curious incident aroused me in a revelation. It was a wanton act of violence that I witnessed, one that proved fatal only to its instigator, a pardoned pirate named Savory, who had come aboard to work off his debts as an honest Christian, yet died a devil full of drink and mistaking the reasonable abjuration of his fellow men for insult. Typical. He was taken by self-inflicting pistol shot, sustained as he attempted to load his piece in preparation for the first of 6 duels which he had arranged as challenges against our group. All of us were sad for his misfortune, but none was sorry that our crew grew quieter in his absence. And yet, at seeing the poor chap wound himself so, and witnessing the blood freely flowing from his body, a notion sprung upon me like an idea long dormant, already within me, yet awaiting a chance to reappear. Thence came the phrase I had heard before springing into mind: the code is in their blood. Suddenly it was sensible to me. The code of life, like a shipbuilder's giraffe in miniature, yet responsible for building each and every man and woman on Earth. How was it that such an idea made perfect sense to me? How was it I understood already that which had no precedence in the most modern philosophies? The code of life in our blood. Imagine. These ideas swirled within me for many weeks upon that voyage, spinning in such maelstroms of thought I could not articulate them. So, to put it bluntly, it's DNA. Finding steady work. So, reaching Jamaica, I pushed all idle thoughts and fancies from my mind and set about finding myself employment. A letter of endorsement from my mentor, Mr. Davenport, hastened my success, and within a fortnight I was able to secure an interview with an agent working for the esteemed Mr. Peter Beckford. We know of him, a man known wide across the West Indies as one of honour and good intelligence. As I must say, was his agent. The man hired me on the spot. Within 2 days' time I was set upon work the slave quarters, fitting them with sturdier doors and tightened roofs. For my own accommodations, I am well pleased to tell they were fine. 3 windows I had, 2 which looked upon the cane fields, where the light breeze filled my room, one seamed with the raw perfume of nearby sea, and the distant sound of hushing ocean surf. Often, too, the spiritual songs of the Negroes, hard at work, entered, and gave me a deep calm. It was pleasant there. Only discomfort could not mask the dread I felt at the thought of catching the yellow fever, or another of the innumerable ailments that often struck those newly arrived to these parts. For my part, I saw well over 17 men and women perish from the disease within 6 months of my arrival. Now, I often have to wonder, could it be possible that, given him being a sage, that he could be technically immune to such ailments? It's a possibility, but whatever. And it's very interesting how Mr. Peter Beckford was very keen to hire the man. So, of my employment I must say something, for it was owing to this connection that I became come to find such a terrible dealings. Peter Beckford was a man of great charisma and pride. In 1662 he had come to Jamaica, and in just 10 years had fast procured himself a sizable portion of land, which he sowed with cane as early as he was able. Upon coming into his orbit, he claimed all about him. One of the largest private holdings of the land in all the world, rivaling only kings and emperors of his largest. For his can't speak. The same surplus applied to the number of slaves in his employ, where he had arrived in Jamaica with a complement of 3, now he owned a better part of 300. A shrewd and relentless man of business, Mr. Beckford was known also to be subservient to a temper of cyclone power. Wrath and fury enmity were his primary means of settling arguments that could not be concluded in Mr. Beckford's immediate favour. He was, however, always kind to me, as a gracious man as one could hope an employer to be. But I put this down to my status in his eyes. He was a traditional man with respect for rank and breeding. In earlier times he had been a governor de facto of the island, and though a statement no longer upon my arrival, he still bore a sign of a man who felt in his natural duty to lead. Further, his political connections he valued as deeply as his sugar and the money it brought him. It was in this capacity, following the arrival of a Spanish soldier, that I met the man who would change my life for the worse, forever. A young man named Luciano Torres. You know, the old guy we assassinated. So, the Templar. It was April of 1673. I espied the galleon in Kingston Harbour flying the colours of the men of Holland, which I thought queer, but not unlikely. This was a ruse, however, for the ship's cargo most assuredly Spanish. A gentleman called Torres, once a soldier in the Spanish army, now an emissary on behalf of his king, also said to Peter Beckford. I learned later that he called himself a Templar, and had made a visit to Beckford plantation to look upon Master Beckford's strange collection of manuscripts. Interesting. Torres was 2 days with Mr. Beckford when another object took his full attention, namely, me. The sight of my face stirred in him a strange sort of excitement, which I found altogether untoward at first, until he pleaded with me with questions that shook me to the core of my being. He said to me one evening, "Have you heard of voices, Mr. Cavan?" "How is that?" I answered, feigning ignorance, though shaken in truth. "Voices from the dark of your mind, or memories to be clearer, as if from another life entire." And here I was terrified. How was it this man knew the odd riddle of my life as if it were a banal factor of history? "I know not what you mean, Mr. Torres," said I, and took my leave of him, so anxious as I was. "Good night to you, sir," he said, as I departed. "We shall speak again when you are rested and ready to talk." Still shaken, I bade him good night and made my bedchamber, feeling another reverie coming strong upon me. When I reached my bed, I fell into both. And here I relate another. Myself and a woman. "Beloved," she said, a voice so intimate and familiar. "Our colleagues conspire against us. They dither and sigh, resigned to their fates, content to champion the humans. But there is hope for us. There is a change we might ensure our bodies to the chilling world, the poisoned atmosphere, and the war itself. Will you aid me? Will you submit?" And here I hear my own voice in answer, "Yes, beloved. What must I do?" "Transference," she said. "The shuttling of our minds from these old bodies into new forms, mechanical bodies perhaps, or into those of our instruments, our humans in short. I believe there may be a way to transfer all we know and all we are into another forms. In this we may survive the coming cataclysm, and live to see our people repopulate the earth and recover her from those we foolishly set loose upon it." Transference, I said aloud. "Our minds into alternate vessels? A dangerous prospect, but reasonable." "Yes," she said. "And who better to make this leap than you, my beloved husband? With a mind unparalleled, a constitution unrivaled, architect of the observatory," the K off took me there, "overseer of Eden's tools, the brightest light in our civilization. If you are not capable of making this leap, perhaps no one is." And here I replied, "I will do this for you, beloved, for us and our people." The Assassin. Lost in my reverie, I failed to see the envelope slipped beneath my door to my bedchamber. It read thus: "Dear Sir, forgive the alarm I must have raised with my query, but you have the exact likeness of a man my colleague and I have longed to meet. Allow me an audience, and I will explain all. Your friend, Liriano Torres." I pondered this letter for some time that evening, wondering what it could mean that I had the exact likeness of a man he knew, and why it should raise so much intrigue. I wondered at this for hours, pacing about the room, with a mind to slip from my chamber, when all of a sudden I heard a rapid succession of reports of pistols and rifles outside in the garden. To my ear, it sounded as if a war had begun, with me a bystander at its centre. I dropped to my knees and hid on the far side of my bed, away from the window. I shut my eyes, but as I did, a voice called out to me from my chamber door. "Mr. Cavan," it said. I raised my head, opened my eyes, and there, a figure cutting a terrible outline, hooded and robed in dusky sirene. The man lifted a small pipe to his lips and blew. I felt a sting upon my neck, as if a mosquito. I'd opened my mouth to protest, but thereupon a wave of fatigue took me, and I fell asleep. Kidnapping, ladies and gentlemen. I awoke some days hence in a bustling native village, in the presence of the same man many leagues from where I had called my home, a native himself with a strong, serious, but gentle face. Now, I probably will butcher his name. He named himself Bahlam, and bade me not be frightened. Strangely, I was not, for his demeanour was calm, his words were kind. I asked him why he had brought me to this place. His surprise seemed genuine, as he told me, "You are a sage. Your face tells it plain, your eyes most of all." I did not know what to make of this suggestion. He went on, "You are but one of a long lineage of identical men born outside their original time. Your likeness and your soul are a pattern, repeated throughout the ages. Oftentimes a century or more passes without the appearance of a sage, another time two are born at the same decade. We know not why. And dashed my brains, but all he spoke was known to me in some instinct way, and yet it frightened me all the same. How could it be that I was a man reborn? How could it be that I had already lived one life and had plodded along through a second, still pondering the first? I spent many a day with this man, and in that time he told me all he knew. Then he asked a question of his own he hoped I might answer. For several days I stayed with my captor, asking him all manners of questions, as he asking the same of me. And all the while I wondered what fate he intended for me. At last, on the 7th day, Bible reference here, I revealed what lay heavy on my heart. "What do you want of me, sir, that you keep me prisoner so?" And at this Bahlam laughed and answered, "You are no prisoner, sage. You may take your leave at any point. Only tell us where you wish to be dropped, and if it be in our power, we shall transport you thence." Well, technically it is hence. This answer surprised me, then angered me. "Why then did you spirit me away with such diabolical methods?" Kidnapped, no less. And said he in answer, "Your master hosted a Templar, and may now be one himself. Such men are not to be trusted with a prize so valuable as you. Steer clear of them, for they seek the knowledge that hides in your mind, your dreams, your memories, and the location of a place once dear to you, the observatory." This word rang in my ears, for I had heard it long before, another memory from a time long ago. "And what do you desire of me, sir?" I asked him. "Would you steal the secrets buried within me too?" He smiled. "I will not shun them, but to share them is a point for you to decide. Your secrets are your own, and yours alone to lend." After my difficult counsel with Bahlam, I'm pretty sure I'm butchering his name, I took a day to ruminate on what should be done. Notions strange and uncertain battles in my head of supremacy, and I was never on one idea long before its opposite seemed a better option, yet at last made my decision. Sir, you have been gracious with me, I told him, and my trust in you is complete. Yet I cannot share my visions and my memories without first understanding them myself. I must therefore take my leave and travel in secret to a place that has occupied my thoughts for many years. Valhallam smiled and said, I understand. Well, and I believe in your cause. To find the source of your reveries will do you great good. Go, therefore, and answer these riddles. We will provide you with the supplies to see you safely embarked. To which I replied, Thank you, sir. And if what I find satisfies me, I will return hither and provide you with answers that may satisfy you as well. In the days following, Valhallam was true to his word. With his young son, Tabai, in tow, he transported me first onto a fishing village near his own compound, and supplied me with maps and coin before issuing a warning. The Templars are lately coming to the West Indies, and this Torres is their Grand Master. And though few now in number, there must be soon in others. Take heed of them, and trust not their entries. For what they cannot earn by conversation, they will take by force. And with this, and a hearty goodbye, I took my leave of this assassin, and set out for parts unknown, a vague sense of purpose pulling me forward. So a great difference. It seems to me that Mr. Beckford must have been a Templar probably beforehand, or maybe he wasn't one until Torres arrived. Torres comes to an area, comes to Kingston, speaks of Beckford, probably about Tom, this guy who's writing this letter, and the assassins must have caught wind. They attack the compound, they rescue the sage, and for a while the sage stays with the assassins, probably in Tulum. And now obviously he's left. So he begins his search. He sets out on the sloop and travelled for nigh on 1 year about the West Indies, sailing with a small crew to all manner of jungles and playas and beaches, looking for a sign or a landform that might spark me in a memory. So I will. So along my way I met many a fine people who did me great kindness. We offered work as exchange for more provisions. In this way I came to know the people of the New World and of the Old, and found in all of them the same hopes and desires to travel. To travel is truly the finest education. It is, to an extent. Because sometimes there are some places in this world that you really... I'm not saying you can't go or you shouldn't go, but sometimes it's best probably steer clear. You know, like you wouldn't go down a certain street without probably having a guide. Then after 13 months a roving, I'm going to say roaming because that would be a lot more easier to say, I found my object well inland on a known island. Here it was, the place Valhallam had called the observatory. Oh, what memories the location aroused. Well, prior to clapping eyes upon the structure, I knew I had come to this correct spot. Leaving my men on shore, I passed through the jungles and deep ravines, coming at last upon the spot, and there marvelled at its strange and foreboding presence. Without prompt, I knew what to do. I pressed my finger onto what I knew to be a portal, and upon its opening I passed inside. What I saw there, however, shall remain a mystery, for the world is not yet ready to hear my tales, which should sound like sorcery to all but my friend, and perhaps the Templars who are likely chase me still. So he remains at the observatory, trying to get all the secrets, and being besieged by new memories coming back. And that it would require a tome twice the size of the Bible to relate them all. Let it suffice to say that I came to understand the nature of two souls within me, and I am now content. After near on a week there, I was visited by a group of natives from the island, the people of the Taino tribe, I believe. They spotted me first and might have killed me straight away, and had utter surprise not widened my eyes to such a degree that their usual qualities were seen by all. Unusual qualities. At seeing me thus, the natives stopped and dropped to their knees with slow gestation. Gesticulation? Not gestation. What did I say gestation for? Tired boy. So, more or less just like really genuflexing, whatever you want to call it. Bowing, kneeling, praising, that sort of stuff. I understood at once that these men were sworn to protect this place, and in my further conversations with them since, I have made out that it was a previous sage who had employed them, or more precisely, I should say, employed their ancestors. Thus, for nearly 150 years had passed since the last sage had come this way. I am told his grave lies nearby, but it's unmarked and inaccessible. It has now been over 4 decades since my arrival at this place, sacred place, and only one question yet lingers in my mind. How many more of my sort have been here in total? Near 80 millennia have passed since our inception, and I am apt to believe the number quite high, but I cannot know for certain. But let that not trouble you, reader, for if you have followed my story's entries, look for my final message in a place where I will soon surely lay, hidden near the observatory, where I have instructed the guardians of this place to bury me when my passage across this mortal coil is at its end. Therefore, fare thee well until then. As I write, the year is now 1706, and I am sickly and in poor condition, and so must tell what little else I can of my condition. All I tell here, I have dread from the dark void of my memory. I cannot confirm or prove what I argue. But perhaps if some others like me were to see this, they too would understand and feel not alone, as I so often have. My original life, I died in the midst of my beloved's experiment. This method of which she spoke, of transference of mind into machine, and from thence into a human body, was a failure, yet an instructive one, I believe, for in my last moments I recollected her comforts to me as a clear promise that my death would not be an end, but a beginning. There is another way, beloved, she said to me, imperfect yet possible. Firstly, I will agree to carry out Minerva's experiments, her terrible gift to the humans. Yet, my purpose will be contrary. My purpose will be your immortality. In collecting samples of the code in the human blood, I will add my own augmentation. Samples of your code, transfigured in such a way that when a proper pieces come together, it may further transfigure a zygote of a newly conceived child. In this way, you shall be reborn again and again throughout the ages. With luck, a recessive reoccurrence shall never die out, but travel on like a raft down along the tide of inheritance. I was dying as she spoke, there in my beloved's arms, but I understood her meaning well. Look for me, beloved. Your death will not be in vain, for I will be with you again, entombed, lying in wait, ready to emerge again when the time is right. She then pierced me through my heart, thus ending my life. How truly bizarre it is that I can claim to have memory of my own death is a ludicrous idea, and yet I know that it happened, and that I now live again, many centuries from that time, waiting for the final piece of this riddle to reveal itself. Yet how this will be, I cannot say. Thus, to any and all who have read this and understood little, be not upset, for there is more mystery than sense in the world, and our only purpose is to endure it. TK 1706. Interesting. And you know what? It's a shame, really. Missed opportunities. Well, I'm going to quit the Animus, and next time you see me, we will be in the present day.